All right, welcome everybody. Let's see, it is 7:01 and welcome to the Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship May lecture. Tonight's lecture conversation is Growing Up with Interdimensional Beings with Ryan Bledsoe and Vincent Genna. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Smith Prim. I'm the co-chairman along with Catherine Smart for the Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship. If you're here for the first time, we want to welcome you and we're glad you're here. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. We are so glad you're here. Our mission here, we want you to know that SFF is here for you. Our nonprofit and all volunteer-run organization is here to help you develop and enhance your spiritual, mystical, and metaphysical awareness and consciousness. We do that by sponsoring programs like the one we have tonight. They're designed to facilitate your personal growth and development and a holistic and spiritual approach to health and living. I want you to be reminded our program is being recorded. So if you do not want to be visible on the recording, please take a moment to turn off your camera. And we ask also that everyone mute yourself if you're not already muted. I'd like to take just a minute to bring us into a centering moment. I do that by a few breaths and releasing and then bringing in and bringing our focus to our meeting tonight. So if you could take a moment and just lower your eyes a little bit and take a breath in and let go of any issues or problems or things that were going on in your day, good and bad. Just let them float away with your breath. And take another cleansing breath in and release. And now with this third and final breath, take a breath in and bring your focus to our meeting tonight and our speakers, and listen and be receptive to the information that they're bringing us tonight. So breathe in and breathe out. And bring your attention back to our meeting. Thank you for taking that moment with me. I'm so honored to introduce tonight's speaker, Ryan Bledsoe. Tonight, Ryan and Vincent Genna will have an interactive conversation about Ryan's life experiences regarding UFOs, interdimensional beings, and the Cape Fear incident. Let me tell you a little bit about Ryan and Vincent Genna. Ryan is the son of Chris Bledsoe, who is famous for his UFO sightings and encounters with celestial beings. Vincent Genna is an internationally known psychic medium and psychotherapist who has spoken for our organization, Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship, on numerous occasions. Thank you for both for being here. Tonight, Vincent will talk with Ryan about his longtime experiences with supernatural phenomena and the UFO community and intelligence agencies interested in UFOs. All these experiences began when he was just 13, after his father was unexpectedly contacted by interdimensional beings on a fishing trip in 2007. The 2007 event called Cape Fear, or the Fayetteville Incident, has become one of the most publicly documented UFO cases of all time. Ryan will share with us the experience he and his family have had, as well as the criticism they had to endure as they spoke the truth about the events and after life-changing fishing trip. Our presentation will be in two parts tonight. The first part is going to be with Vincent interviewing Ryan about his experiences, and we'll do that until 8:30, at which time we're going to take about a 5-minute break, gives you time for a bio break, and then we're going to return for our participants to ask questions. Now that is a great time for you. The question and answer period is one of the benefits of the live Zoom program presentations that you cannot get through our YouTube replay. And it will be posted on YouTube in a couple of weeks. By the way, if you want to hear more about the Fayetteville incident and the things Ryan's father has seen and learned, feel free to watch his father's 2020 talk for SFF on YouTube. So now, I hope you're as excited as I am to hear what Ryan and Vincent have to talk about tonight. Vincent and Ryan, it's all yours.
Well, thank you so much, Smith, really, for that. And just to share why we decided to do it in this format where Ryan and I are going to be talking, because Eileen and I had a chance to meet this young man in a very casual way. And we saw nothing but an incredibly warm, charming, down-to-earth, brilliant, wise, and loving human being. And we figured that this would be the best way for you to be able to experience him the same way we did. So Ryan, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm so excited about this myself, buddy.
Thank you, Vincent. You had me blushing there for a minute. So.
Well, good. That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do, is make you blush. All right. So the way I'd like to start is this. See, I have this scenario in my head, right? Here I see Daddy's coming home from work or wherever. You're 13 years old. He comes walking in. Family's sitting around. Hey, honey, I'm home. Oh, by the way, I met a couple of aliens on the way home. And Mom turns around and says, that's okay, hon. We're in North Carolina. There's a lot of immigrants here. No, honey, real aliens. How did that hit you? How did that sit with you when you first heard that, Ryan? Please.
Well, I got to tell you, that's not how it went down at all. It was a lot more traumatic. So
really?
Yeah. So back in 2007, like you said, I was 13 years old. I was in the 8th grade. And at the time, this happened on a weekend, on a Friday night. So at this time, I was staying, my older brother, Jeremy, my younger sister, my mother, and I would routinely stay with my mother's mother across town. It's about a 25, 30-minute drive from where we lived. And my father and my oldest brother, Chris Jr., were staying at the house because they worked together. Chris was 17. He was recently out of school. And he would work with my dad, you know, so they get off a job where they were staying at the beach for a week, and they get back and they want to go fishing. The whole thing happens. And then to answer how it, went down and me finding out, Monday, I get off the school bus, walk next door to my dad's parents' house. And my grandpa says, Ryan, your dad's been smoking dope in the woods and he saw green booger men. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. My dad doesn't smoke dope. He doesn't even drink. And then, that night I see my dad and he tells me everything that went down, and my mom is livid. She's ballistic. She didn't believe a word of it. And for years she didn't believe a word of it. And it was pure chaos. And it was a very traumatic happenstance, hearing about the experience first from my grandfather as an insult and insinuating he was lying and using drugs, and then the rest is history. But
okay. So I got a question. This may be putting you on the spot. Did you believe your dad?
Yes, I have from the very start. I mean, you got to put into perspective, 13-year-old kids are pretty much always going to believe their dad, even if they say they can fly, and I believed him from the start. And it helped his case that within days or weeks, I started seeing the lights in the sky myself. And then I've never doubted him ever since. But I always believed him.
Okay, so wait a minute. So what he started to experience, you actually saw one at 13 years old? You saw some of the same things?
My whole family did, yes.
How did they handle it?
Not very good. I would say my siblings pretty much have run away from it up until their adult lives. And I always ran to it. And it's just ironic because here we are as adults, and you see now that I have a podcast, which is all about it. And my siblings have finally come around, and all 3 of them have come on the show in support of me and Dad and trying to go out there publicly for the first time. So it's been a really chaotic, traumatic journey of me being the one kind of locked side by side with Dad with this whole encounter. And I see some familiar faces in the audience, Mr. Larry Burke, and I'm sure he could attest that, when he was at the house, I was usually there right beside Dad, wanting to meet everybody that came, and he's giving the thumbs up. Yeah. And,
right.
And my siblings weren't usually that way. They ran from it because here's why. because when it went on TV and the kids at school started making fun, it wasn't really fun anymore. You know, they wanted a normal life, and that's totally okay. I never really was that way. I tend to be more that way now, but yeah, I mean,
Right.
we all saw stuff.
Back up a bit, because then you said we got to TV. Okay, so dad comes in, he's telling everybody your grandfather thinks he's nuts and on dope. How did it get to TV? How did it get publicized? Wouldn't that have been a thing that you guys would have like kept quiet and everybody tell him, shut up, don't say anything? How did it actually get out there? What happened?
That's a good question. So I'm going to walk you through it.
Good.
So the event happens in 2007, and my mom and my dad are fighting really bad. And admittedly, those are some of the worst things I've ever witnessed. Was, you know, following that night on the river, coming home and hearing my dad's incredible story, and then seeing my mom and dad fight for years and years, and it just tore me apart. And I know at one time, my mom, and I don't blame her, you know, she was doing what any normal Southern Christian mother would do, and oh my gosh, these paranormal experiences, it has to be demonic, right? Totally normal. So like, I don't blame her, but it is what it is. I know one time she brought a preacher to pray the devil out of my dad. So imagine seeing that at 13, you know, it's really mind bending. So the point of that is, for about a year, my dad never reported his experience, because he was in deep fear of losing his children, because that conversation was happening. Nobody in his family believed him except for his children. At the time, his parents didn't believe him. None of my mom's side, no one believed him, except for very few and far between friends. And dad and I are watching UFO Files one night, and this is 10 months after the initial encounter. He held this in from the public for 10 months, other than, you know, like friends and family, word of mouth, right? And we see on UFO Files, if you've had a sighting, report to MUFON.com. So my dad, 10 months after that night, he reports it to MUFON.com. And within days, they send a packet in the mail, and they said, Chris and Chris Jr., please draw the entities that you encountered and draw the craft that you witnessed. And when they drew the entities in the craft and they mailed them back, he got a call from MUFON. This matches some of our previous witness sightings. We would like to send an investigator out to your property. So the way MUFON works, for anybody who's unfamiliar, it is structured as a kind of like a pyramid organization, where there's the top, which is more of a corporate structure, and then at the very bottom level is just free volunteers. So like if you have a chapter in New Mexico, anybody can sign up and be a volunteer. You're not paid. They call you up and they say, hey, somebody said they saw something in their backyard. Go talk to them. So we met that guy, the volunteer guy in the North Carolina area. Comes out, incredibly nice guy, starts interviewing my family and walking around the property and doing some little investigations. And he calls back to MUFON, the North Carolina chapter, and says, I think we have a CE4 abduction case here. We need to do a full-scale investigation.
Now, I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt you, but for everybody who's listening, MUFON is strictly a UFO research organization?
Yes, it means Mutual UFO Network.
Gotcha.
They're a UFO investigation organization, or what have you. And
all right, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Interrupt anytime.
Okay.
I will not be offended, I promise.
Good.
Let's see. So he reports back that he believes this was a CE4, meaning close encounters of the fourth kind, right? And next thing you know, the director of the entire United States division of MUFON personally comes out to the property with a documentary crew and an investigator who at the time had been working for Homeland Security. And they did the whole documentary, and you know, the rest is history. But it's because my dad reported his sightings on their website, and his descriptions were incredibly vivid down to the minute little detail. And it matched with some government reports of sightings from the 1950s. And they actually showed us photographs of the images of the same exact entities and craft, hand drawn from witnesses in 1952. So they knew from the start that we were telling the truth and that these experiences were totally real. They did a major investigation and they got all kinds of evidence, like radiation samples in the yard, in the grass, by the trees. They didn't air any of that. Why? I couldn't tell you. I suspect it was to make us look bad or whatever. And I don't want to get into too much of a he said, she said, but I will say that the documentary crew and the MUFON investigation team promised us that this would be major vindication for us, and it had the opposite effect, and it was edited in a way that put us in a very negative light, with some deceptive editing and really abusive lie detector practices that were not legitimate. And anyway, long story short, they didn't do us very well, and for 5 years we were in agony because the public was ridiculing us and mocking us. And Dad had a following of people on like Facebook and things like that who would come out and they would meet us and were incredibly kind people, and it got us through. Honest to God, it got us through. And so where do you want me to go from there? Do you want me to just
Okay,
keep
hold
rolling?
on a second. Yeah, I want to back you up a bit because you're definitely sharing a great story about what happened. I'm wondering about your personal experience through this whole thing. Yes, you believe Dad. You're 13 years old. Your hormones are raging. You're on the inside and the outside. Your whole body and chemistry is changing. You hit puberty. You're growing up, and bam, this stuff hits you. So between your parents having discourse and now between the community, Ryan, can you go inside you and share how did that make you feel as as a kid, and about your family? How did that make you feel?
Well, it was bad. I remember following these events in the 8th grade. I had to be put in guidance counseling. And I remember, thinking back on it as a 28-year-old adult, I remember several days or weeks of class where I would just hold my head down and not talk to anybody and just take notes and not want to socialize because I was so emotionally devastated from the events that were happening.
Were they
And
abusing you in school as well?
no, it was just more so depression from going home to a hellish home situation. Between my mom and my dad and my family was in pure chaos, because I knew that my dad and my brother were telling the truth. I mean, it was obvious. And my mother was so desperate to cling to her worldview and shun these experiences, and it was just it was indescribable. It was chaos. It was fighting day in and day out for weeks or months.
Now,
And
I bring this up, and I want you to bring this up because we're going to be reaching a point talking about where you are right now and what you went through. But again, back there then, did you wish that your dad hadn't said anything at any
no,
time?
no, the only thing I ever wished was that I was the one that was there that night and not Chris Jr. And I don't wish that anymore because I see how psychologically devastating it was to my older brother. But I never wished that it didn't happen to my family. I never wished that Dad didn't say any of it. The only thing I wish is that it would have been a little more smooth and people would have believed him and recognized that he was telling the truth. But, we can't change the past. So it is what it is.
And at the same time, if you don't mind me sharing this, because I know, wasn't your father going through some kind of illness at the time, physically?
Yes, he was. He had Crohn's disease for 17 years. And I remember my earliest years, being 3-4 years old. He couldn't eat or drink certain things. It was such a constant struggle. And that night in 2007, when he was taken by these entities, he never had to take his Crohn's medication ever again. He was healed. He actually was in remission from that point forward.
Wow. Did that at least help some others in the family start to believe you?
No, it didn't, because it didn't at all, because cognitive dissonance is a powerful thing. I mean, people believe what they are comfortable believing. They don't want to believe the truth because sometimes the truth is really scary. And it's really scary when your cousin or your uncle or your nephew or what have you, in this little old country town in North Carolina comes and says, I saw these entities and they told me they were angels and they look like this and they had red eyes. You know, they thought he was crazy. They thought he was on drugs or psychedelics or anything you can imagine. They said it about us and all of us, and they still do. But
And I don't know if you had mentioned this yet, but your family comes from a Pentecostal background, isn't that correct?
that is correct. And that would also shed light on why my mother was so afraid initially, because, you know, to give a little context for Pentecostal belief, I remember as a child, we weren't even allowed to talk about ghosts around my Pentecostal family members, because from that point of view, it's a sin. It is an actual literal sin in the eyes of a Pentecostal person to discuss paranormal things and consider if it may be true. And now you have my dad walking up saying, I saw these entities, they showed up in a craft and they took me and they healed me and they said they were angelic. It freaked the community out. I mean, real bad.
Oh, I'm sure it did. But did you guys ever talk about like why this was happening to your dad and then you guys? Why?
We talk about that a lot more now, but back in that day, we didn't. We just accepted that it was happening. And you know, it's like everybody always says, "Why you? Why you?" And we're like, I don't know. I want to know as well. And you know, when things are happening to you that are very shocking and very scary and very mind altering,
Dina!
I think
Oh.
someone's unmuted here.
That's okay.
There you go. Mind altering
love you.
experience right there. But
Not right.
when you go through things that are incredibly mind altering, you know, for anybody who's been in that sort of situation, it's all you can do but to just make it. You know, you're not thinking about the why, you're just thinking about how can you make it through. You're just making it day by day. And that thought never really occurred to me until I was an adult. Why is this happening to my family? You know, I just always accepted it.
Were any other professional people brought in, and I'm not talking about MUFON or ufologists, actual psychotherapists for the family, or did Dad seek out any kind of psychotherapy for himself?
So MUFON did hire a Harvard psychologist. He's recently, or I wouldn't say recently, he passed away many years ago, but he's since passed away. His name was Michael O'Connell, and he did the hypnotic regression for my dad. And other than that, no, we have not sought out any sort of like professional help or anything of that nature. I will say though, to that question, we have routinely and still are routinely visited by members from the intelligence agencies such as NASA, CIA, NRO, Homeland Security, things like that. We routinely get visited by those kinds of people.
Okay, now it's so funny that you put it that way. I think you're being really nice. They're much nicer now, but some of the stories that you guys and your dad shared with me, that's what I want to go to. Okay, so you gave the beginnings, you started to give some, but there were a lot more experiences. Once this became public, things really began to change then, and these agencies
Yes.
started contacting Dad. How did they contact you? This didn't seem like an email. Oh, we'd like to talk with you folks. How did it really present itself that you experienced?
So when I was 15 years old, keep in mind the initial encounter happened in 2007, and then the documentary aired in 2008. So now we're talking 2009. Okay, so the documentary's been out for several months at this point. I distinctly remember it was summer, and at the time I was in high school, so I didn't have anything to do during the day. I was too young to have a job. I'd cut grass if my dad needed it, and that was about it. Chores around the house. And I played a lot of video games in those days. Back then I was kind of a book nerd, and me and all my friends would play video games, and that's just what it was, you know.
Normal.
And normal, that's right. And I remember I was playing video games, or I was asleep in my pajamas or something in the morning on a weekday during the summer. My parents were not home. Actually, my mom was home, but my dad was not. He was off working. And there's a ring at the door. And when I go and answer the door, it was a NASA scientist by the name of Hal Povenmire. And he flashed me his lapel. He had a laminate with a NASA identifier in it. It said Harold Povenmire, Press Corps, NASA. And he said, "Hi, I hope that I have the right address. Is this the residence of Chris Bledsoe?" I said, "Yeah. What can we do for you?" He said, "Well, I hopped in the car from Cape Canaveral and I drove 12 hours just hoping to have a conversation with your dad." And I'm like, Mom, NASA's here," that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Actually happened. And I called my dad on the phone and I said, "Oh my God, Dad, NASA's here. What do I do?" He said, "Stall him, bring him inside, talk to him. I'll be home in an hour." So I bring him in the back and me and Mom talk to him. And then the rest is history. Ever since then, the Department of Defense has been intimately involved with our family.
Okay, we don't want to jump there. We want to hear this story because it starts getting even rougher and scarier at times, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll share that part. How so?
Okay. So you, just to be clear, you want me to go into some of the rougher experiences?
Oh, everything. Everything you are comfortable, Ryan, everything you're comfortable with sharing, go into it because we need to hear your experience because there is an end result to all of this. So share what you can.
Okay. So the gentleman from NASA had come and he was routinely coming to visit. I mean, it got to the point where he would stay with us probably once a month at some point, and he was in our life for 11 years. And then following that, so let's just fast forward a couple years because that's when the CIA contact got heavily involved. So we're at 2012 now. And in 2012, my dad has another very profound entity encounter. And I'm going to go over this very quickly. I promise it leads into the CIA thing. So
it's okay.
It's Easter in 2012. My dad hears a voice at 3 a.m. It says, "Arise." He gets out of bed and he walks into the backyard and there's 3 of those entities. The ones from the first experience in 2007. They lead him into the backyard and I'm very much paraphrasing the story here because it's a long, incredibly detailed story. I'm going to leave some details out just to move through. Okay.
Okay.
But anyway, so these 3 entities end up leading my dad to this very beautiful, bright, shining, glowing female entity. She's actually depicted artistically right here behind me in a white dress.
Oh, wow.
And she was floating on the ground or off the ground. She tells my father her name is Hathor. She says the hidden one is Amun-Ra, and that it is my father's burden to tell his story to the world. And if he doesn't, he will have blood on his hands like Joel the Watchman from the Bible, because there are bad people in power at the top of humanity who are intentionally scripting the book of Revelations to force a cataclysmic end time timeline. And that essentially it's up to humanity to discover that we have to learn to shun fearful vibrations and tune into the vibrations of love so that we could shift into the age of Aquarius. So anyway, my dad has that experience. Next thing you know, he starts talking about it publicly.
Whoa.
In about a year, that's when the CIA starts knocking. And in 2013, a man by the name of Timothy Taylor, he was a gentleman at NASA and the NRO, a very high level member of the Department of Defense, comes to our property. He flashes a CIA badge, Area 51 badge, Air Force, NASA, and it was 4 or 5 badges. I think I listed them all. But anyway, he comes into our property. He hands us some classified materials. And so to put it this way, when I say classified materials, let's just say that the lingo that the Department of Defense uses for these kinds of materials is OP, which is short for off planet. And he put these 2 pieces of metal in my hands. And when I held them, there was electricity running through my body. There was just this very strange but gentle and pleasant electricity. And he put this metal in the palms of the hand of every member of my family and my wife at the time, who was only my girlfriend. And the only member of the 7 of us who held these 2 metals, the only one who did not feel any sort of electricity was my wife. And I'll get to that in a second. My mother, my two brothers, my sister, and my father all felt the electricity. My father felt it by far the strongest. It was so powerful, his vision blacked out and the muscles on his arms were convulsing and you could see his muscles clenching and he couldn't see, and it was causing his body to kind of like seize. And this guy from the Department of Defense looks at my dad and he says, "Why you?" And he said, "What is happening to me? I can't see. What's going on?" And we take the metal out of his hands. And the guy explains that these are off-planet materials. The isotopes do not originate on Earth. They're classified, and they understand that through testing classified subjects, that anybody who experiences the electrical reaction, they know from their records that means they have had entity encounters.
Whoa.
That we have met and seen entities. So at this point, the Department of Defense is trying everything they can to weed us out. I didn't mention this earlier, but the NASA guy actually entered our lives covertly to try to debunk us, and he never could. And for 11 years, he remained our friend until he passed away from a head injury. He was in his 80s. A very sad day. But anyway, so the guy, he hands us the medals. We have these encounters, and he's blown away. And he actually, so for the next year or two, he remains intimately connected with my dad and starts pushing my dad's psychic abilities to the limit. And my dad, very early on, since having his experiences, had an innate ability to remote view people without any training, without even trying, without even knowing he was doing it. It was just like one day he's talking to you, the next minute he's telling you, "I see somebody, he's driving in a car. It's so-and-so," and he calls the guy, and what he's describing is actually happening. And my dad's profound psychic abilities following his encounters caught the attention of the psychic spy program. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later too. So anyway, so this guy from the one who handed us the medal, he starts pushing my dad's psychic abilities as well. And he sends my father eventually, fast forwarding a little bit because we only have another hour. He sends my father a photo of a sunflower. And he says, "I want you to meditate on this image. And I want you to let me know if anything profound comes to you in your dreams or in your thoughts." And that night, my dad had a dream of a cellular function, like a biological cellular function, a way that a cell on the molecular level could harness and transfer energy very purely. And when he woke up, he drew this little diagram that came to him in his dream, and he sent it to the guy. And long story short, the guy was secretly working on some cutting edge cancer technologies, and that psychic download from my father allowed him to have incredible breakthroughs on his cancer technology, and they were able to heal people of bone cancer.
Wow. That unbelievable. I never heard that part of the story. That is amazing. So you're experiencing all of this. What was a frightening part, if you want to
So that's
share
that's where we're going next. So
oh gosh. Okay, hold on,
getting,
everybody.
Thank you for getting me on track. So we're going to we're going to phase into that now. So it started off pretty good, interacting with the government, despite the fact that the MUFON, the whole Discovery Channel documentary, was very insidious. After that, it was pretty pleasant for the most part. But then we really started getting a little too involved with the CIA, at least for my comfort. And at the time, I thought it was cool. Anyway, that's not here nor there. I think any young person in their 20s would no matter what, think it was cool being involved.
Oh, that's of course, that's a natural experience. Hey, that's not what your friends. Hey, guys, at school. Hey, guess who came over for dinner? Yeah, the CIA. Yeah. Everybody gets a chance to express that.
Yeah, still happens. But anyway, so let's see the bad experiences. So past that guy coming around, we start getting involved with some other members of the CIA, and not all of them are bad. Some of them are very nice, like Jim Simivan. He is the vice president of To the Stars Academy, and he's also known as being the partner to Tom DeLonge, the rock star from Blink 182. Very popular 90s rock band. Anyway, so they started this company called To the Stars. Now let me back up and tell you how we met them. So about 2015, word starts really getting out in the intelligence circles about my dad's psychic abilities, especially following the Tim Taylor experiences and the medical breakthroughs. And just through the grapevine, through these channels. And there's this guy who likes to remain anonymous. So just for that, I won't say his name.
Okay.
But he found out about my father. He invited my father to a party of 100 prospects in the Philadelphia area. Let's just say he lives out there, and he had an encounter that blew his mind, like a UFO type encounter. And he is a very incredibly, unfathomably wealthy individual. I mean, money is not an object to this man. And he was determined to find the world's expert on UFOs to help him deal with his experience. At least that's what he told us. So he invited 100 people to this $250,000 party called The Gathering. And my dad, coincidentally, was the last person invited. And when he gets there, this guy, well, I almost said his name there, but I had to stop myself. But this guy, he meets all 100 people. And there were lots of people. There were Christian ministers, there were Satanists, there were shamans, there were psychics, there were cops. He invited everybody he could think of from all backgrounds, from all cultures. He was determined to find somebody out of every potential background. And some other pretty famous UFO people were there too. People like Stan Romanek. If you Googled him, he would pop up. Anyway, so he meets my dad and he's enamored by my dad. Party's over. My dad's the one he stays in touch with. He's realized, okay, my dad is the guy. He felt like it was a divine happenstance to meet my dad. This guy starts introducing us to some other people in the CIA, which leads me to expect or understand that maybe it's all been a put on and he's had him in his pocket and it's this big extravagant thing. I don't know. I'm speculating. But anyway, long story short, 2015 comes around and he flies me, my father, my wife, who at the time we were just boyfriend and girlfriend, and my mother, if I didn't say her already. He flies the four of us out to Philadelphia. We get in a van. We drive to New York City, 2 hours. We stay at the Park Lane Hotel on Central Park. Very nice, fancy hotel.
Yeah,
I mean,
really.
They really wined and dined us. I'm telling you, money was not an object to these people. They're like, let's just say they are venture capitalist types who fund political movements and things like that, and
Wow.
and have politicians in their pockets. And
Of course.
we're just little country people, so we're just going with it. It sounds exciting, right? And we get there, and when we're in the lobby of the Park Lane Hotel, he introduces us to the director of the spy program for the Central Intelligence Agency, and one of the only living senior intelligence officers for the entire United States CIA. His name was Jim Semivan. And we spent the weekend with this man. And they rented out a conference room at the top of the Park Lane Hotel. And he briefed us on some things that clued us into why these things happen to our family specifically. And I'll give you a clue that he indicated that it had something to do with our family's genetic predisposition, potentially something to do with our heritage or something to do with our bloodline. I don't know for a fact, but that's what he indicated to us. And he made it very clear that he wanted us to research our bloodline and see if there was anything there that indicated anything. And I will say what we did find after that was that we very highly likely do descend from one of the English royal families. I mean, I can't prove that, but the evidence is there. Like King Henry VIII, King Henry VII. But
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't get anything in the will, so don't worry about it. So anyway, and we're hanging out with him, and then on Saturday we go to a bar mitzvah down the street in New York City for I don't want to give the name of this child away on this program, but let's just say he was a politician's kid, very sweet kid. It was his bar mitzvah, like I said, and we go there with the head of the spy program, and then when we get there, the director of the CIA is there. The deputy director, Michael Morrell. And we're just having the time of our lives. We're partying. We're thinking, oh my God, the government's on our side. They're good people. Wonderful.
Oh.
So then fast forward a little bit, we go home, maintain a friendship there. I forgot to mention this, but we also were connected with a man by the name of John Alexander, who was, He was the guy that the George Clooney movie, The Men Who Stare at Ghosts. It's a hilarious movie, but in reality, it was not a comedy. It's a true story. It is the story of the psychic spy program ran by Army intelligence. And the George Clooney character is based on this individual that we were introduced to named John Alexander. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
So following this party, they start really getting my dad heavily involved with actual remote viewing training through the people who ran the remote viewing program for the Army intelligence. Or for Army intelligence. And then fast forward, we meet some other CIA people. Now we're getting into the dark stuff. I had to set the stage. Through our friends in the CIA, we felt comfortable. We felt safe. We felt protected or whatever. So we just started meeting them all. And there's another individual who I've never named publicly, and I like to keep it that way, and you'll see why in a minute. He somehow or another gets in touch with my dad. I can't quite remember how, but he does. Through the grapevine. Believe it or not, there is a CIA grapevine. And anyway.
You mean the CIA has some CIA undercover members too?
Well, yeah, but they have a rumor mill and they all know each other behind the scenes and they talk about each other, even with civilians. It's the funniest thing when you're talking to a CIA officer about another CIA officer and you're a 23-year-old kid wondering, like, why are they telling me all this crap? You know?
Wow.
It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Life is strange sometimes. But anyway, so this guy introduces himself to my dad and he starts sending civilians to our property because he's not retired. He is an active officer of the CIA and the DIA, which is the Directorate Intelligence Agency, whereas the CIA is the Central Intelligence Agency. This guy's in both. And he's a real crooked fella, and he starts sending people to our property to harass us. And he actually, believe it or not, has a cult. He has an end of the world eschatological cult where they are obsessed with the end times and bringing it about on humanity at all costs. And they
causing it?
Yes.
They're about causing, hey, we're doing a good job ourselves. We don't need the help.
Yeah, exactly, right? So this guy's obsessed with the end of the world. They had these metaphors. They had a whole layer of subterfuge behind their myth of their cult. I mean, I'm telling you, they had code names for each other. They have, they believed, the thing that they said was that they're driving the eschatological school bus or bus, and they're making stops along the way to meet all of the players. This is their terminology, obviously not mine. And they were trying to meet everybody that they could who could help bring about the eschaton, which means the end of the world. It's a Greek word.
Oh my God.
And anyway, they started putting death threats on my family.
How so? Whoa. How did they do that? You had all these other people that were involved with you to protect you and help you. How did they get about?
Compartmentalization. So the CIA is extremely compartmentalized, and some people have blackmailed, like in the case of this fella, some people have so much blackmail on foreign leaders that they're beyond the law. They just, for some reason, they can't seem to be arrested or held accountable for their actions. And I think it's criminal, but it is what it is. It's the way they operate. And this guy, they can't take him down. And he runs around gung-ho, just harassing citizens and threatening them with death. And one thing he did was he sent this civilian to our property so that it couldn't be traced to him. But one thing he did do was he called the civilian when he was in the room with my father, and he spoke with my father on the phone. So, you know, he 100% did come on account of this guy. And the civilian said to my dad, Chris, if you don't tell your story the way that we want you to, I can blow Yvonne and Chris Jr.'s brains out. We have the license to kill. We can run you off the road with a Mack truck. We can do whatever we want, and no one will even bat an eye, and you'll never know the wiser.
All right, don't go past that. You hear that. How did you respond then?
See, I wasn't there. I live here in Wilmington with my wife, so I heard about it on the phone, and I was livid. I wanted to kill the guy with my bare hands. I know that's not right. I know that's wrong, but I was so enraged that I wanted to act out. I wanted to get back at them. And admittedly, my podcast and what I'm doing, is because I've been so molded by these events and the government directly messing with my life since I was a 13-year-old child. This is how I fight back, is do it the right way, or at least what I feel is the right way, and try to provide information to people out in the public that says, hey, this does happen. Here's how you can deal with it. Here's how I've dealt with it. But I was enraged. I was horrified. And, thankfully, when he did put those death threats on my dad, an orb appeared behind him, and it scared him so bad he never came back. An orb actually appeared and showed the guy that it was protecting our family. And we have had some other run-ins with CIA people, mostly like online. They'll identify themselves and they'll harass us and they'll levy threats on us. Like I've had threats of lawsuits because my dad posted a photo before, stupid things like that. And I have quite the following for my program. And I have to tell you, anytime I ever post a video of like orbs or lights or whatever, I constantly get harassed in the comments. And I am just understood. Look, I know for a fact the CIA monitors my social media. They've told me, they've emailed me that, and I just take it in stride and I just ignore them and move on. And
So even now, they're still harassing you and bothering you about this?
yes.
But the government just released information about UFOs, and so it's supposed to be more accepted. How are you dealing with? Now, you're married. I know Jennifer, wonderful girl to be there. How did you stay together? How did she want to stay a part of this? That's what I don't understand. Both also your sister, you had Jack as her husband. How did these outsiders want to stay there and experience this with you? What got you through that?
That's a great question that most people don't ask. Admittedly, it was very hard for my wife at first because it was very overwhelming coming into a family who deals with, extra dimensional entities. And then on top of that, the government who's vying for them and to investigate us. And like, she's met everybody I've met for the most part, as long as she's been in my life. As a matter of fact, the first guest she ever met related to ufology was the guy who brought the medals. And she's met the Hollywood people. She's met them all. And, it's exciting for a time, but there was a while where she questioned, was this right for her? And, we're still together. So obviously it was, but it wasn't easy. I would say in the case of Jack, I mean, that's a no brainer. He's a silly, goofy dude who just is head over heels for my sister. I don't think he ever questioned for a second.
Wow.
He's a very good-hearted fella.
So go ahead. You have more about this. All right. So you got that major harassment stopped. You're getting harassed, but the death threats stopped, didn't they?
Yes, they did stop because, I talk about them publicly intentionally so that, if they ever did kill me, people would know because I've been shouting it at the rooftops on my program.
Okay, so that's now. So when you got out of, or when you were just leaving high school, was it more accepted then? Was it more because it was more public? How did that transpire? How did the community transpire?
So the community never accepted us, believe it or not, until recently. Even when I was in high school, they didn't accept it. And to keep in mind, I've been out of high school for 10 years now. I graduated high school at 17. I'm 28 now. And the encounter happened when I was 13. So that was only 4 years, of me being in school. It was not accepted. Family still does not accept it. I actually recently, because of posting about my podcast on Facebook, I got into a major argument with family members on my mom's side, which is unfortunately why I don't post things about this on my Facebook anymore because of scrutiny and judgment from my family. But, they haven't really started coming around until recently. And I would like to think it's because of the podcast and because of the buzz that it's generating, and it's cool with the people my age and it's hip. And, now I'm getting dozens of messages from people I grew up with from school or whatever saying, oh my gosh, I had no idea that your family had it this rough. Right. I saw you on TV all those years ago and didn't know it was that serious, And
they grew up. And they started to open up. At least many of them did.
Yeah.
So there's also a side of the story that really not just emotionally affected you guys, but physically. Didn't it cause a displacement in where you were living?
That is actually unrelated. We were evicted from the property for things unrelated to the encounter entirely.
But there was no animosity at that time that you were going through all of this stuff?
Like animosity
From
for,
family and that still a frustration between family members?
oh, there absolutely was. It wasn't because of the encounters, but there absolutely was animosity at the time and just things happening in our personal lives and the
So there was
property.
lack of support to start with.
Right. Yeah.
Then you were going through all of this.
Yes. Yep. And I
Oh.
will say, admittedly, my dad's family is really starting to come around. Like both of my dad has two sisters, and both of them, every time I talk to them, they're asking me about the podcast. Oh my gosh, I listened to an episode. I love it. You know, they would never talk like that before, but I think that people are starting to come around. My mom's side, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest.
Really? Wow. And so this has become very public. I mean, you Google your father, it's tremendous. Do you still don't mind that type of publicity in your life now? I mean, you and Jenny are forming your own life, but this has completely changed it. You can never take this away or go back hiding again. It will always be out there, you know? Ryan Bledsoe and your father will pop up and all the story. How do you feel and deal with that? How do you feel about that?
Well, ever since I was little, and this experience happened to my family, I knew that it was special. I knew that it was angelic. I've always believed in God with a whole heart.
Wow.
I don't care how it's defined. I believe it, you know? And when I was 18, my dad told me that the entities told him that someday I would grow up and tell the story. And we thought I would write a book. We thought about it. What do we do? And it came to me, you know, and my friends who I do the show with, I'll do a podcast. That's what's in now. Everybody and their mother starts a podcast. And I'm at the point now where I realize I have two options. I could either retreat into the shadows and try to ignore it like my siblings did and hide from it and hope it goes away, or I could embrace it and go 1000% full steam ahead. And that's exactly what I've done. And we're seeing tremendous success with the podcast. And my vision for this thing, call me crazy, I don't care. My vision for this thing is to hopefully change the world, or at least a small part of it. So I am intentionally going as hard as I can with this project to provide a window into the life of a family who experienced real extra dimensional entities, so that as many souls as possible that can observe my program can have the opportunity to believe in something greater than themselves, a higher power, something, a force that is positive, that is transformative, you know, because when you turn on the TV, you turn on the media, it's all negative. And to me, that's evil. To me, it's harming people's consciousness. It's perpetuating this fearful vibration. So I'm trying to fight that with whatever I can. And, you know, it seems to be working for at least a few thousand people. So.
Oh, it'll be working for a lot more than that. Now, let me ask you, I know, so Dad hears it. I've been with him. He knows, he gets in tuned. He knows when they're coming around. He's even asked them to come around. How about you? Like, first of all, how many actual sightings and encounters did you have personally? And can you feel anything? Do you share anything that Dad experiences?
Yes, I have remote viewed before. Not as good as my dad. I don't like see things as clearly. I tend to feel them and pick up on certain sensory details. But that was a targeted thing. I was practicing with people. I don't much enjoy doing things like that. I don't really have the itch to push my psychic abilities. I see myself as more of like an educator type, you know, who
Oh, and you are.
Thank
We'll
you.
be talking about that in a moment, but you are definitely an educator. I've listened to your podcasts
Thank you
and
very
talked
much.
to you. Yes, absolutely.
Well, yeah. So I will say that I have personally had somewhere in the high hundreds or thousands of sightings throughout my life. I mean, we're talking 15 years here. I've seen entities. I have been touched by entities, that was life-changing for me. I've been touched twice on my
Wait a
body.
minute, a physical entity touch you? A physical, what you would think is an alien, or a spiritual entity? There's hasn't Dad seen both?
Well, you know, if you ask my dad, he would say he doesn't even believe in aliens. He believes they're all spiritual, you know. And that's what attracted the government in the first place, was my dad describing that there were these spiritual angelic entities, like they told him. But yes, it was a spiritual entity. It was made of energy. It appeared to have a form, but when it touched me, it wasn't a physical touch. It was static running through my body, and it left a red mark on my ribs. And after I was touched by this invisible hand, I looked up, and then I see the entity standing there, and then it disappears.
What
And
did the entity look like?
exactly like my dad and my brother described. It has been rendered through CGI. It's been drawn. If anybody wants to Google like the Chris Bledsoe entity or whatever, it's the short 3 to 4 foot tall entity with round head, round eyes, hands and feet. I saw one in my bedroom. And there was another time in the kitchen that something touched me on the shoulder, and same sensation. It felt like energy, like if you have chills or goosebumps, but imagine that times 1,000, and every fiber of your skin and your muscles, you feel that tingling very densely. And I turned around, and there was a orb in my kitchen, like a light, a bright light, and it disappeared.
Wow. Now, your father has shown me plenty of these. So just for everybody to understand, so that you know, the typical picture of an alien, a gray, they're called. The grays are the shorter ones with those shaped heads and the eyes. Those are the pictures that your father has shown me over and over and over, and hundreds of them that he has. That's the entity that you're talking about. Isn't that correct?
Yes, but I would say it doesn't look like a classical gray as described, you know, throughout the last few decades. It's distinctly different. It has a very round head with bright red eyes that are perfect circles, and they blink like shutters like
Okay.
this. They rotate in their blinking. Now, when I saw this thing, it was borderline invisible. It was translucent like glass. It had no color. But when you see them, you know, fully turned on, so to speak, they have color. Their bodies glow, and they look like they're made of glass, and they have red eyes. And that's exactly what my dad and my brother saw. When I saw it, it was inside. I suspected that it was just trying to show me a little bit of it so that I would understand what I was dealing with here. And it looked like glass. It was just no color. But
Okay,
just,
I thought he did show some pictures that look like regular, like what we see as, or what the rest of the world sees as aliens, and that he has seen those as well, or that the two that went to your brother, remember he said that that somebody told him, the entity told him that they would like the kid entities?
I mean, they do closely resemble grays.
Okay.
They do, but they didn't identify themselves as that. They identified
Right.
themselves as angelic entities.
Because we're the ones that identify them as that.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
Right, exactly. Like we'll say we're in New York or we're in New Jersey, and then they go, well, you're just people.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now what I need people to understand here is if they ever met your family, okay, through all of this, they are some of the most loving, compassionate people my wife and I have ever met. Like I said about you. Unbelievable people, very caring, very loving. I was at both your weddings, your wedding, your sister's wedding. I saw the love. How did that happen? What did you guys do as a family unit to help maintain that and not go off the deep end and have major problems?
Well, we're very lucky because when we were, and thank you, by the way, for all the kind things you said. And I will say you were a hit at both weddings. But
I didn't mean to be. The bride is supposed to be in the groom. Yeah,
I think it's the suit and the hair. But
right.
Anyway, so you know, we're very lucky because when we were little kids, my parents always prioritized. There's 4 of us, and my parents always prioritized that no matter what, we have to stay together. And I've heard it my whole life. Someday, when you're old, the only thing you'll have left is family. Family is the most important thing. I've heard this over and over. Blood is thicker than water, blah, blah, blah. And to an extent, that's true if you choose it to be. And my siblings and I, we were just like any normal siblings. We fight and we squabble, whatever, but we always make up at the end of it, no matter what. And I remember, you know, little boys fight. It's just what they do, you know. And when we were little, we would fight all the time physically because we had 3 boys and a girl, and we always wanted to roughhouse. And I just remember watching my oldest brother Chris hurt my other brother, and you know, like pretty bad. Like they got in a fight, and my parents, what did they do to solve this? They locked the 3 of us, and I wasn't even involved. I was innocent. That's the funny part. They locked the 3 of us in a room, and they said, "You're not leaving this room until you hug and you make up and you're happy with one another." And and those lessons that our parents have taught us, to always reconnect, to always put your siblings above everyone else, and to stay close no matter what. I think that's what got us through all these experiences. And, you know, when your family is put on TV and dragged through the mud to the whole world, to what feels like at the time, everybody, you know,
Right.
It'll make you and your siblings have this agreement, like it's us versus the world. And it really is that way. And or it feels that way. And I know it's not really that way, but it has felt that way. And I think it's made us closer than ever. And we have a bond that people can't really understand. And you know, I just think it's a mix of things. I don't know, but my friends always tell me that they've never seen siblings as close as me and my siblings, and I can't say that I have either.
Eileen and I understand it. It's called what we're supposed to be.
Right.
And when you have that many angels coming around you that your father believes in, it should be bringing out the best in all of you. And they were coming there just to validate that for you. My goodness, that's what I take from it, because they are so loving. Everybody needs to know that. You really have to have an opportunity to meet this family. You're meeting Ryan, who is an incredible example of them, and how when you allow, and you keep saying it, Ryan, if you choose to make this important, if you choose to go in the right path, and you always seem to be making those choices, and you've made more since then. So the direction you graduated, if I might share, from Methodist University, and tell us how you went in that direction after all of this. Why weren't you like interested in science and astrology and astronomy or things like that? What made you go into where you went into?
So, okay, that's an awesome question. So when the documentary crew came and did the whole investigation on my dad and everything, like I mentioned earlier, they brought a hypnotherapist to do a hypnotic regression. And when I saw that at 14 years old, it blew my mind, because it was something that I didn't know was real. I didn't know it was possible. I didn't even know about paranormal experiences. I mean, I was raised Pentecostal, and now my family's seeing these beings together, and I'm open to these exciting new possibilities of what's real and what isn't real anymore. And that profoundly impacted me. And when I grew up and went to college, I knew that I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to be a therapist or whatever. So I got a psychology degree. And in my final years of college, I think I graduated a semester late. So I was a little older graduating than I should have been. I was like 21 or 22 or something like that. I think I was 22, where I should have graduated at 21. And anyway, so when I was 22, my final year of college, I had taken so many religion courses on the side just to fill in spare credits, that I was approached by the chair of religion department at the university. And he said, you know, Ryan, I see you taking all these religion classes. If you just take 1 or 2 more, you can declare this as a minor and graduate with a minor in religion. And I was like, well, that sounds great. Sure. And I started taking higher level religion courses that the majors you typically take in that field. And the thing that I believe propelled my consciousness forward faster than in many years was when I started learning about Gnosticism in my religious courses. And I started to understand how it makes sense that I somehow deep down in my mind and in my heart believed in Jesus, but knew that the Bible wasn't giving me the whole story, because I'm seeing these beings and I know the Bible is not the whole answers to the universe, if that makes sense. Trying to be as respectful as possible to religion. But I started studying the alternative versions of religion and understanding, these beings told my father in 2012 that the hidden one is Amun-Ra, and this female entity identified herself as Hathor. And that shocked me so bad. I believed it, but I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to open that door.
Who were they? I'm sorry. For people who don't know, just explain real briefly who those characters are.
Okay, so Amun-Ra is the main deity of the ancient Egyptian mystery system, and Hathor is like the female depiction of like the mother goddess or the divine feminine in Egyptian pantheon or mythology. And she identified herself as the divine feminine. This entity did. She said she's Hathor, the hidden one is Amun-Ra. She is the divine feminine, and that the age of Aquarius will come when humanity is back in harmony and balance with the divine feminine. That's a requirement to enter the new age. And anyway, so I wasn't ready to go there at that point. I'm only 18. 3 years later, or 4 years later, I'm 22. And I start to go there. I start to open that door. I start to study Gnosticism, which propelled me forward into studying the mystery traditions of ancient Egypt and the Hermetics, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. And if not, long story short, it is probably the oldest philosophy known to mankind. And it opened my mind to bring me down the fast track to initiatory traditions, studying mystical philosophy. And here I am today talking. Oh, and by the way, must mention this. When I was 24 years old, I met a very profound and incredible famous psychic medium named Vincent Genna.
Oh, God.
And he is the man who, for the first time in my life, convinced me that chakras were real. And when I started to understand these more mystical things were true, it allowed me to step into who I am today, if that makes sense. I don't even really remember the question, but I felt like that was the answer. So
no, that definitely was a great answer, even if whatever the question was. And thank you for even saying and suggesting that I had a part of of your growth, because you're showing here. And again, how old are you right now? How old are you? You said 50, 60, 70. What, how old are you?
28.
28 years old, and you sound wiser than so many more people that I know already. This experience catapulted your wisdom, and people, you need to listen to Bledsoe Said So. Eileen and I had been listening to it, and we're going, how is that all in your head? See, this is why I wanted you to tell your story, because people need to know, what do you attribute your current balanced normality? I mean, you are a healthy, and I don't want to say normal like mainstream people, because you're far above that. But what do you attribute? What gives you your strength? Yes, I know you said your family. Yes, I know they were close. But there's a lot of close families and a lot of messed up people in those close families. I know, I came from one. What gave you your strength to continue making these higher choices, Ryan?
If you want me to be perfectly candid, which is sometimes hard for me to do because of trauma, but if you want me to speak from the heart and give you the God's honest answer, I believe that I have a resolve that is unbreakable, and I have thoughts in my mind that I can't explain on a nearly unregisterable level, deep in my subconscious, that tells me, you have something important to do, get up and do it. And I have always had a very independent mind, and I don't ever believe something unless I choose to. I don't ever believe something just because somebody tells me to. I don't care who it is. And I mean this respectfully. My mother and my father, even, my grandparents, whoever. I've always been that way. And I just believe that in some way, in a past life or in the spirit realm or whatever, I chose this path for myself, and these beings constantly appear in the visible spectrum so that my family can be reminded that we're not crazy. We do have something that we have to do. Get up and do it.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love the fact of how we were even brought together at
It
a
was
George
crazy.
Norrie event in Asheville. We had no idea who you are other than your father was there, you guys were there. They were busy talking, and we were talking with you guys. We were talking about everything, and
Yeah.
it was just so amazing for us at Eileen and I at our age having this discussion with you. And you're so mature. And Ryan, I've got to tell you, I know I keep blowing smoke up your butt, but that's okay. You need to hear how special you really are. You keep even apologizing or saying, I mean no disrespect and stuff like that. I'm from New York. I just turn around and say, I don't give a shit what you're talking about. You know what I mean? It's just like, and you are so gentle with it. That seems to be part of your nature and a part of your soul. And so where do you go from here?
I don't know. Like I don't really see very clearly. I just get up and I go, and every time I do, it takes me somewhere I don't expect. And like I can't know the future, I can't see the future, but I feel the future, and I feel that the future is really big for me. And it always has been since I was a child. So I'm just going and doing what I'm feel like I'm supposed to do,
And you felt that even during all of this discourse and this crazy stuff that was going on and these life threats and everything, you still felt, you never wavered from that?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. When I was a 13-year-old boy, I knew someday that my story would be told around the world.
Wow, I need to eat what you're eating or take what you're taking. That's unwavering faith. By the way, there's another word for that. It's faith. You have unbelievable faith. And that's what I see in your family, not just in yourselves, but in spirit and God, whatever you choose to call it and feel comfortable with. And I see you passing that around to others. And now what led you to Bledsoe Said So? I know you were saying you wanted to really get the message out, but what finally made you go, all right, we're doing it now? Was there another thought? Was there an entity?
Yes. And that entity was my producer and my co-host, two of my very best friends. And I knew that someday I was going to do something, but I didn't know what. I was very confused. And I didn't listen to podcasts at the time, so it wasn't even on my radar. And my producer, Alex, very smart guy. When I met him, he was very interested into open-minded subjects, and he just took off with the experiences of my family, and we really bonded over that and became very good friends. And he was telling me, like the first week of us knowing each other, he was like, you've got to start a podcast. Let's start one together. You'll be like Joe Rogan and I'll be like Jamie. And I'm like, I wouldn't know the first thing about that. I don't know what to do, 3 years pass with him in the background telling me I should make a podcast. And then my other best friend and my co-host, Nick. And I just want to say, both of these guys are on the show. That's why I keep reiterating.
Seen them?
Yep. And you've met them as well. Yeah.
Yes, I have. Great guys too.
Yeah, they are. They're very great guys. And then my co-host, Nick, says, we have to make a podcast. We have to do this. You have no clue how big it will go. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't even know what to do. And I finally agreed to do it. And 6 months after I agreed to do it, we launched our first 2 episodes, and it just took off. And now, because of just the way that things have happened and the path that we followed, we are now very blessed to be rated in the top 1.5% worldwide of all podcasts. And we're approaching 250,000 views and downloads within our first year. So
that's insane. That's insane. That doesn't happen that way. People are trying so desperately to get out there and do successful podcasts, and you come along and you just do this podcast at 28 years old and boom, it starts flying. Kind of like that. You're soaring. That's right.
Yeah.
I can only see it getting bigger for you because of the podcast. And even earlier, once you guys got out, this is what I forgot to ask you is, have you reached other people who had similar experiences? Have people contacted you and your family to talk about that? Your dad, you?
Thousands.
Really?
Yes, privately through like Instagram, Facebook, email, phone call. Thousands of people have reached out, and they still do daily. daily. That is not an exaggeration. I personally have probably 1,000 DMs between multiple social media accounts that I can't for the life of me keep up with because I'm too busy. And at this point, I can't even open them all anymore because of the anxiety it brings me to try and sit there. I used to sit there for hours and go through every message and try and respond. And just unfortunately, I can't do it anymore. My dad, God bless him, he still does that. And he will, for hours, he will sit there and he will go through every single message. And that's been going on for 13 years. My dad has been getting these messages. And again, like, like I said, you could, maybe when we get into the question and answer phase, you could attest, Mr. Burke in the audience, he's one of those individuals who maybe he could attest, he reached out to my father and they've been friends ever since. And see, he's given the thumbs up. My dad has made hundreds of friends in person. Yeah. Now we met a different way. It was destiny,
Yes.
as well as, it was destiny, everybody you meet, I believe. But the way we met was very weird. It was very weird. It was definitely a different encounter altogether.
As it was.
It was very bizarre. But yes, we do. We to this day still daily get messages. It's unfathomable.
As have people had as well, I would say traumatic of an experience as you guys, or different levels. Do they share all of that with you?
The majority of encounters that I read about in the messages, because I do try to read them all. I can't respond to them all, but I do try to read them all. And the ones I've read have usually been obviously very profound to the person.
Okay.
But the experiences tend to be just like, I saw an orb in the backyard. I don't know what it is. Please help me understand it. I don't get a lot of people saying they've seen entities. I get some.
Now, your father has sent me, he does it all the time. I love him, whenever it's recent. Not too long ago, he sends me right away clippings of pictures that he's taken of orbs. So explain to the attendees here. Okay, so he's seen orbs, and there's the beautiful balls of energy that are floating and changing colors and everything like that, at least the ones that he's shown me. But he's also seen craft. Hasn't it been other kinds of objects that he has seen also, Ryan?
So from what we have experienced, the orbs and the craft are one and the same. And this is when we get really deep down into the rabbit hole, and most people have to buckle up for this part, but it is what it is.
We're buckled.
So the crafts are quite literally entities themselves. They are unexplainable, living, interdimensional organisms that serve the function of transporting other interdimensional life. And they grow and they shrink, and these orbs grow and become the size of crafts, or sometimes the crafts will shrink and be the size of an orb. And they're not something that rules really apply to, if we're being honest. And the craft that my father was taken on board in 2007 actually was a big glowing ball of light. It was not metallic. It was actually radiant light.
You are getting into George Lucas metaphorians. Weren't they called the metaphor? Isn't the force made of living?
Metachlorians. Yeah.
Right, Mediterraneans, exactly. And what I find interesting is George is very, and we come to find out, George Lucas is very metaphysical and spiritual. Mm-hmm. And that saga was basically written about us. It was a contemporary, basically Cain and Abel story from the Bible, and how we're related to the Force, and how we can either be Luke Skywalker or turn into Darth Vader within inside of us. But that he described the Force as living beings, just like you're describing the craft. Mm-hmm. They were living beings that also functioned. That did that sit with you? Like how did that get defined in your mind to be able to accept that? Did they tell you that? Did Dad tell you that? Who was able to explain that to you?
Well, the entities explain that to my father, as well as the Vatican. Long story there that we don't have enough time for, but I'll just summarize that my dad got at one point involved with some people from the Vatican, or at least emissaries who were traveling to and from the Vatican. And that was one of the things that we had discovered, that, in the Vatican archives, they have these 9 classifications of angelic entities. And they were interested in my father because they understand that the UFO and the angelic phenomenon are truly one and the same. It's just a fact. You know, a spiritual entities, there's a whole spectrum of life out there in the cosmos, you know.
That's right.
All life is connected. I don't care what anybody says. All life is connected. There's only one true source of consciousness. We all come from it. I don't care if you're Muslim or Hindu or Christian. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care what we
That's
believe.
right.
It's a fact.
And didn't Dad say, correct me if I'm wrong in this, that the Vatican said that they have writings that they believe that the disciples were not just experiencing Jesus when Jesus came,
Yes.
but were experiencing those angelic orbs or entities that were helping them along the way.
Yeah, so now you got me back on track there. So in the Vatican archives, they know and understand that there is a race of celestial being called Ophanim, which in the Bible would be identified as the thrones. Do you remember when it's talking about the thrones and the powers and the principalities?
All the time, yes.
Yep. So the thrones, hint, hint, that's the crafts. And the beings, the entities that maneuver these thrones, so to speak, would be what we would understand as like seraphim or cherubim or what have you.
Yes, always. And didn't Elijah come down on a golden chariot of fire too?
I'm not sure.
Yes, that was also referred to in the Bible as well. And many of these symbolic, like you're talking about, many symbolic things. That God or spirit or something was dropping manna. This was also in the Vatican, in the papers, that when the Jews were being led out of Egypt with Moses, right, and they were walking through the desert for 40 years, that the manna was actually being dropped by these angelic beings that were following them. So there is still a belief that it may not be public because it would blow everybody's mind, right? Wouldn't it?
I also forgot to mention this earlier, that when the Department of Defense guy handed us those metals that shot electricity through our bodies, he explicitly explained to us that the material is bioorganic. It is a very advanced material. He identified it as quasi-crystals, which was something I had never heard of until recently. My dad told me that.
Really?
Quasi-crystals, yes. It's some strange advanced material that is in some level alive. It's organic, yet it's inorganic. And the way I understand it is that, you know, if we look to the ancient past and we compare and contrast all of these mystical traditions from Greece and Persia and India and the Far East and et cetera, they all had one thing in common. And that thing is, we're just kind of bumbling around through this physical reality through many lifetimes until we evolve back up to the true spiritual reality. Some people call it a matrix. Some people call it a simulation. Doesn't matter to me. I don't care about the semantics.
Right.
And from what I understand, this little reality that we chose to come to is just a little mirror image of the higher eternal spirit world. And, you know, to consider that an advanced entity could manifest something physical that is also intrinsically alive, just like the crafts in the spirit realm, you know, they appear as light. It's a living entity. Well, they could manifest a physical object that also has the properties of being alive. It's like magic to them, you know. It's no game to them. It's just they can change reality in any way they want. And we have to pick up the pieces and try to interpret the data. And we have these scientists in the Department of Defense finding this material and they don't understand how it works. But, you know, they're like genies, they're like angels, they're like spirits, whatever these different cultures call them.
Right.
They can do whatever they want and manifest whatever they want. And we have to deal with it. So.
Well, it was actually Albert Einstein who said, for any species to come out of another universe to come and visit us, they would have had to be of higher consciousness and have complete command and demand over spiritual concepts. And you have just proving that they are that high. And the fact that we're capable of healing our bodies, we think that that's amazing and a miracle. Meanwhile, they are so far advanced, but knowing that we could be the same way. Isn't that the major message, that we can evolve to that level?
Yes, that's actually what the female entity Hathor told my dad in 2012. She said that this is we come here on a journey of the soul, and that eventually we will be as they are, referring to the entities, and that we're all just going through a spiritual journey of evolution, and that consciousness is eternal, and that when you die, you enter into the eternal spirit world. You never truly die.
Wow. Now I know, and sharing, that your father can actually call upon them to show up. And I wish I was at your rehearsal dinner before your wedding, because Dad shared with me that he called to ask for a blessing over you and Jenny's wedding, and that to the guests and everybody, some orbs actually appeared. Can you call upon them, Ryan? Are you at that point, or do you want to even do that?
I've never really tried. I've never been, I guess the word I would say is I've never been confident enough. I've always believed it was my dad's job to do that, and I suspect that someday when he unfortunately passes on, that maybe I'll have to, because who else will? I don't know, but I just take it as it comes, and I'm very grateful whenever I have a sighting. There was one time that I was able to do that, but I was with my dad and my brother, and I said, we're going to see something, and then something appeared. And other than that, it's usually when my dad brings it on. I do see things by myself, but it just happens. I've never been like, come down, let me see you kind of thing. I know that these entities work in ways that's very mysterious, and they come to you when you need it, kind of thing. And I feel like maybe my dad always needs it, but yeah, I suspect someday I'll probably be able to do that. I'm kind of having Dad teach me, and he's given me the secrets, but what I understand is the most important thing is the faith and the trust and the confidence.
That's what he told me. He says a lot of spiritual prayers, and talks a lot of love. It's a lot of love. And he says you have to fill your heart with love, and you can call upon them. And again, we're down to a couple of minutes before we take a break now, Ryan. But I mean, just the most amazing story, but the most amazing outcome. There has been less in people's lives, and I hope everybody really gets this message and understands this, that has happened. We think, okay, the dog died. Oh my God, that's going to break apart my life. Oh, no matter what we've been through in our lives and our stories, this is one of the most incredible stories, and the growth that has come out of it. You are all fairly successful. I know what your sister's doing. I know what your brothers are doing. You're all doing great things. And it doesn't seem like that's the outcome that should have happened. And you're not surprised by it for yourself. What about your family members? Do they feel that they've grown from this at all?
They do now. Since the podcast has come out and been out almost a year, they're starting to accept and understand that maybe they have more of a part in this than they initially thought. And at this point, all three of them have come on the show. My oldest brother, Chris Jr., has not, his episode hasn't aired yet. It will air next week. So 6 days from today, whatever day that is, May 11th, I believe.
Can you share the information about you? How would people get in touch with you or get to see the show? Where do they need to go to actually see all of this?
Well, it's just called Bledsoe Says So. It's on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, everything. I believe it's even on Amazon Podcast. But I will warn the listeners, it is a millennial show, so don't be shocked if there's all kinds of colorful language and things of that nature. But I'm doing everything I can to connect with the younger generation, so hopefully you'll understand. But
oh crap! There's a whole bunch of us people over here that we're used to that stuff. Some of us even come from New York, so we're used to that, Ryan. We actually appreciate it. But let me tell everybody, you just said a millennial type of thing, and it seems young. No. You might hear those words, but this is one of the most intelligent podcasts that my wife and I have ever listened to. I'm telling you, there is brilliance and knowledge and wisdom. And you are really achieving what you set out to do, Ryan. I hope you're proud of that.
I am, but I am always questioning myself, am I worthy?
Get over that, buddy. I had to a long time ago, and I'm still dealing with it. You are, and you've made a big difference in people's lives already without even knowing it. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be that popular. So understand that. So thank you. Is there anything else before we go that you wanted to share last, and then come back and do the Q&A?
I think I've said everything I need to say. I see people asking when is the podcast on. It's pre-recorded. It's not a live show, so it's just already on the internet. You can search it. There's 40 something episodes, and you can just take your time and get. It's hour episodes. Some of them are a little longer, but pretty short, 50 minutes to an hour. And just search Bledsoe Said So wherever you enjoy media, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever, and it'll pop up.
Absolutely. And what a fabulous title. It is so catchy. Thank you, Ryan. We're going to take a break now, right, Smith? And we're going to come back and you'd be ready for some Q&A other than from me.
Yes, thank you both. Wow, wow, wow. That was awesome. There's so much information there. And I'll have to watch the recording of this when it's posted in a couple of weeks, be posted in a couple of weeks. And again, there's something that you get from the live presentation of our show that you don't get from the recordings. But I'm looking forward to hearing the podcast of Bledsoe Said So. I'm going to be tuning into that. Thank you again, everybody. If we could give a hand to our presenters tonight. And
Wasn't too out of the box.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. And thank you for supporting the Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship. Thank you all and have a good night.